Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Eitan and today I would like to show you how to create a React application out of a Webflow project. So if you've seen tutorials regards this issue up until now, someone probably have told you just export the project provided by the Webflow gods, go through the project, the HTML and CSS files which are quite messy, and put it into React components, and afterwards just you have a React component. That's basically what the tutorials are all about. And this is a very agonizing and time-consuming process that me personally I'm not a fan of. I don't think that it's very practical that someone gives you a design which is put into HTML and CSS files, which then you have lots of problems with because the HTML file is very big, the CSS file is very big, so you have quite messy React components, and you have a quite messy CSS file which looks like this. As you can see, it's not messy, but it's very long, and you can't maintain that. And if you'll take a look, you'll see rules which can easily collide with some of the rules which already exist in your application. So for example, if you use Bootstrap uses the button class. So this can easily override existing logic within your application. Also the JS file, which are loaded with that quite long one-liners, minified scripts. I don't want to deal with that. And the assets, just a bunch of random names with, I don't know, probably machine generated. But I want to treat the view as a black box. So Webflow will provide all the designs and the views, and then I'm going to do my thing with React. This is the only thing that I want to do. So before I get into that, let's first take a look at that Webflow project, which is fairly simple. We have a home page. We also have a thank you page. And the idea behind it is that in the home page, there's the contact form, and then you fill up the details. And once you press submit, it will send a request to the server, submit the data in the database, and then you'll be promoted to the thank you page. So just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to do something much simpler. I'm going to implement logic using React components. I'm going to enter a name. This name is going to be submitted, and then you're going to be promoted to the thank you page where you're going to see thank you, whoever this is. That's it. So in order to do that, first of all, I'm going to create a React application using create React app. And now I'm going to start the app just to ensure that things work correctly. And as you can see, classic create React app, nothing to it really. Now I want to get to the interesting part. So what's the easiest way to take the files given to us by the Webflow Studio, all these messy HTML files and CSS file, and put it into our project in a very easy and maintainable way? So the way to do so, there's a tool which does that automatically. It's a command line interface called Appfairy, and Appfairy basically, as an input, the command line interface function takes the Webflow project, the files exported by it, and then it transpiles it into React components and scripts and styles and whatnot, and then you load it within your application, and it simply works. And it does it in a very comfortable and unique way. You'll soon see. So in order to start with Appfairy, what I need to do is install it globally. And I'm going to create a directory called .appfairy. And this is going to be the input directory for the exported assets by Webflow. So before I proceed, I'm only going to add a git ignore rule for that directory, because I don't want the files inside the directory to be included, because we always going to be replacing them. And so going back to the Webflow project, I'm going to prepare a zip file and download it. And I'm going to take the content of the zip files. I'm going to open the Appfairy directory, and I'm going to unzip them into that directory. And now a very complicated step, pay attention, type Appfairy. The reason why it didn't work, as you see, Git needs to be initialized. So let's do that first. Sorry for that. And I'm going to create an initial commit. And again, let's run Appfairy. And as you can see, something happened. It created a bunch of files and it created a new Git commit. Let's see what happened in our Sublime. And there's the views, there's this views directory, and inside there's a bunch of views which look like React components. There's styles, and there are random scripts. So the scripts and the styles needs to be loaded, and then the views can be used. They shouldn't be used directly. I'll soon get to that. Why script styles views and why the src directory? This is the default behavior. It can be changed using a config file. More information about that is provided in the link in the description box below. So check that for further information. So in order to see the initial layout without any logic of the Webflow project, first of all, as I said, I'm going to import the styles directory, and I'm going to import the scripts directory. And we're going to replace it with the app component. And the index view is placed over here, as you can see, and this is matching the names of the pages in the Webflow project. So the home page is translated into index view by default. And now what we're going to do is we're going to run our application and see what happened. And as you can see, this is the initial page, the home page provided to us by Webflow. But there's nothing really practical with that, because right now I can only type stuff and click the submit button, and nothing really special happens. We need to implement the logic. And the way to go with it, of implementing the logic, is not by editing the views themselves, because they're quite messy, and also whenever the design changes, then we will need to change all of that, and then we'll need to resubmit the event listeners, and there's another technique to do so using Appfairy. So first of all, let's come up with a plan. So we have the contact form component, and inside we listen to events of the name field, and also we listen to the on-click event by the submit button. So we do want to create a component out of this contact form, because right now, as you can see, there's no contact form whatsoever. There's just a bunch of random pages, and so we want to separate it into a different component. So how do I do that using Appfairy? You need simply to define a new attribute called AFEL. So AF stands for Appfairy, EL stands for element, and here I'm going to give it a value. That's going to be the name of the component, and I'm going to save it. And inside of the contact form, I want to create interaction points between the view and an external component, which is called controller, because it controls the view. The reason why we work this way is because we don't want to enter the view, because the view is going to be constantly updated by our Webflow project, by Appfairy, and we don't want to deal with that. Therefore, we need to split the logic into an external component. And so in order to define an interaction point between the view and the controller, what we need to do is define another attribute called AFSock. Sock stands for socket. So whenever we define a socket, this is the interaction point. So you can enter the socket and just pass props to that element and listen to events emitted by this element. So the name of the socket of this element is going to be called name. And we also want to have a socket for the submit button. So again, AFSock, the name for it is going to be submit. So fairly simple up until now. And also I would like to define another socket for the contact form. And why is that? Because if you think about it, there's a main component which is going to be the controller for the index view, and then it's going to pass properties to the contact form. Why? Because these properties are passed by a router. We're going to have a router in our application, one for the home page and the other one for the thank you page. And then when the way we are promoted is by the history object. So whenever we push a new state of the history, then we need the relevant prompts. So I'm going to define a new socket. I'm going to call it contact form. And the last socket that I'm going to define is in the thank you page. So I'm going to call this socket message. And the reason why I define a socket over here is because, like we said, we want to see thank you, whoever this is. So we basically want to control the contents of that element. Now, assuming that I didn't forget anything, I hope I didn't, let's export the project. We're gonna download the zip file. And then again, like before, what we're gonna do, we're gonna open the Appfairy directory, and inside we're gonna place the new contents of the generated project. We're gonna unzip it. And before I proceed, I would like to create a new commit. And the reason why I do that is because Appfairy is using Git as a version control, so we don't want any collisions to happen. Although it will print a message to the screen, I'm only preparing. So let's type Appfairy. And as you can see, a new commit has been created by Appfairy, and this time it provided us with a new view called contact form. Now, let's start implementing the logic. It starts with a router, so because we want to start with the home page and then we'll be promoted to the thank you page. So in order to do that, I'm going to install the React Router package. And now let's import the router. And we're going to replace the index view with the router. And now we're going to create two routes. One of them is going to be for the home page. The component is going to be index view. The thank you route, that's going to be the thank you view. Now we need to import the thank you view. And that's it. We have a router. Just let's make sure that it works so I won't have any further mistakes. Okay, so I have a syntax error in the switch. So wait, let me just check the thank you route. Okay, so as you can see, it's like before, only there are a few things missing. There's the contact form missing, and also in the thank you route there's the thank you message missing, and that's because the view is connected into an external component, the controller, and once the controller doesn't define explicitly to show up the contact form, then nothing will show. Same for the thank you page. If there's no controller which is explicitly defining, hey, show me a thank you message, nothing's going to happen. And the reason for that is because sometimes we apply conditions in a React component, which means that it works. I'll soon get into that. So in addition to the views folder, we're going to have a controllers folder. And inside, we're going to create a new controller. We'll start with the index controller. Now this name is connected to the index view. And now we're going to create a new component, a new React component. And the controller is going to use the index view. And now we're going to export a new dummy React component, which is going to render the index view. And inside the index view, we're going to render the contact form. And we're going to forward all the props from here to the contact form, because the contact form relies on the props provided by the router. And speaking of which, let's go to the router. And instead of using the index view, we're going to use the index controller. And I have a syntax error. Let me fix that real quick. As you can see, we have the contact form showing up because, as I said earlier, it's connected into a React controller, and once you don't define the contact form explicitly, then nothing will show up. And it makes sense because sometimes we apply conditions into React components. So now let's define another controller for the contact form. And again, we're going to import React. And we're going to use the contact form view. And we're going to export a controller. And we're going to create it. Now inside the render method, we're going to use the contact form view. And inside we're going to define two proxies for sockets. One of them is going to be the, if I remember correctly, the name socket. And the other one's going to be the submit socket. So once the name have changed, we're going to trigger the setName method. And once the submit button have been clicked, we're going to call the submit method. Let's define both of them. And here we're going to set the state to target value. And here we're simply going to promote the user into the new page. The new page is thank you with the root state name. I'm going to have the same value as state name. And let's define the state of on the component. Let's see that everything works correctly, that we are promoted to the page. Okay, there's something wrong in here. Just let me check. Okay, so apparently I just had to rerun the React application. There was something wrong with the watcher. I don't know what this is. Irrelevant. But anyways, once I type the name and I click submit, now I'm promoted to the thank you page. But we still haven't finished. We want to see thank you, Eitan, which is my name. Nice to meet you. And in order to do that, we're going to define the last component called thank you controller. And inside, it's again a dummy component. And inside, there's a socket named message, if I'm not wrong. And inside the message, we would like to see the name we've just sent to this location. And now let's update the router. And now let's see the final flow. Hopefully there's no surprises on the way. So apparently I have used the wrong handler name. Sorry, I'm a bit rusty today. But let's test it again. Let's type my name. And as you can see, thank you, Eitan. And that's the whole flow complete. Now, final thing that I would like to show you before I finish the presentation is how easy it is to update the design and then migrate the React project. So in Webflow, it's very easy to drag and drop elements and then change their position. So I've just changed the location of the contact form, and normally, according to that change, I would need to update my React project, which I'm not sure. It depends on the change. I'm not sure how time consuming that is, but it certainly consumes time. So why not avoid that if you can? So let's export the project again, prepare the zip file and download it. Again, we repeat the process again. First, we're going to commit all the changes so there won't be any collisions with Appfairy. And we're going to open the Appfairy directory, submit the input again, run Appfairy, and then let's start the project and see what happens. As you can see, the contact form has changed its location, and we don't care about that. The logic have stayed the same. So I type a name and then submit, and then you'll see again, thank you, Eitan, and we haven't done anything. That's because of the way Appfairy works. The controllers have remained the same, only the views have changed, which we don't care. We treat it like a black box. So that was it, everyone. Thank you very much. I really hope you liked it. If you did, be sure to press the like button, leave a comment in the comment section below, and subscribe for further tutorials about this tool. Looking forward to see you in the upcoming video. Cheers.